I turned down a full ride scholarship to pursue a career in aviation at Embry-Riddle. I could play basketball on a full ride scholarship to a school, or I could go the aviation route.
Once you're in the industry, it's hard not to kind of soak up some of that passion because everybody just loves what they do.
Will you introduce yourselves and the roles that you guys each have? Because I know you're both in different roles.
I started actually at Star Aviation 10 years ago, this year, right out of college. And I actually started at the front desk because I was new to Atlanta, had no idea what I wanted to do with my career. Had a degree in marketing and international studies and just wasn't sure if I even liked the city, so got a temp job. It just happened to be at Star's Aviation's front desk, and everything completely fell into place. I feel very lucky, and that's actually where Priya and I met. I personally started as an underwriting assistant and then worked my way up to underwriter, senior underwriter when I left. And I joined Marsh just over 1 year ago, about 14 months. And I joined with the specific purpose to head up the aviation workers' comp specific segment. So in the Marsh Aviation team, there's about 70 of us. I and one other teammate in Dallas specifically handle all of our workers' comp placements. So that's what the type of underwriting I did at Star. And so that's basically all I've ever done with my career is aviation workers' comp. So very niche within a niche, but it has worked out really well for me. And so in that sense, what I do is a little bit different from everyone else on the Marsh Aviation team, with the exception of my one team member. And for that reason, I overlap with Priya in different ways. So we do actually have the same title. We are both client advisors and vice presidents within the Marsh Aviation team, but we have different placement functions. So we place very different policies and learn a lot from each other and work very differently. And our days do look very differently compared to each other, even though we're on the same team and have the same role.
I also joined the Marsh team about a year and a half ago now, so a little ahead of Emily in that regards. But I also started off as an underwriting assistant, but for their general aviation team, placing, industrial aid accounts, light aviation as well is included in that. So your, little Cessnas, your flight schools, some ag companies and all of that. And so I did that for a few years. And in my role at Star, I grew to kind of work in what they call their major risk team, their airlines and product manufacturing team. So we're in charge of placing coverage for airlines and product manufacturers. I did that for 8 years, and then I got out of aviation, actually, still in insurance, but out of aviation insurance for 2 years, and did financial lines, which is your directors and officers insurance. Yeah, so my role at Marsh is I'm a client advisor vice president for placing general aviation clients. So that includes your corporate flight departments, flight schools. I dabble a little bit in the product world. I'm not doing so much of that right now. General aviation, there's a big growth in that industry. We're kind of going after that segment of business. We place their hull and liability coverage, which is very common in the insurance world. Our jobs are never the same every single day. We always talk about the clients that we have. We're very fortunate at Marsh to work with Fortune 500 companies a lot of the times. We are dealing with, what we call top tier flight departments and just top tier clients in the aviation world. So as you can imagine, we always think of a flight department, for example, a corporate flight department. It's flying your executives around the world for their, business operations, but no one client ever has the same exact thing. So you might have one client that does one way and another client has a different team that operates a whole different, a different way entirely. So our jobs are never boring, that's for sure. And Emily and I, I mean, I didn't know anything about work comp, aviation work comp. I knew that's what she did at Star. And so in her role, as she's come into Marsh and me as well at Marsh, we just stand up, we sit right beside each other. So that's the great thing about being in the office sometimes is we just quickly stand up and I'm like, hey, why don't you explain to me what you're doing and what you're working on? And I'll do the same thing for her as well. So we learn a lot, from that way. I don't place the coverage that she's placing, but at least if I know enough, I can talk intelligently to some of our clients and then, put them in touch with someone like Emily or someone, within Marsh that can place a different line of coverage.
If you're going to go into a line of insurance, I mean, aviation is fascinating. It is a very cool line of insurance. And we feel lucky that it provides us with so many opportunities to do such amazing things. And I will say, you know, everybody is so passionate about it. It's hard once you're in the industry, it's hard not to, you know, kind of soak up some of that passion because everybody just loves what they do. You know, we might be talking about insurance, but it's with a smile on our face because it's, like I said, it's an interesting line and we feel lucky that we're in the industry.
Was aviation something that you always were interested in, or is that something you stumbled upon? How did you step into aviation?
Yeah, so I mean, from a very young age, I was actually originally born in England. So from a very young age, flying has always been something that we did to visit family here in the US and or just visiting family elsewhere. So, back then this was pre 9/11. It was so cool because you could visit the pilots in the cockpit and have conversations with them. So at such a young age, I had always had kind of exposure to something aviation related. In my high school days, there's a college actually not far down the road from where I went to high school that has an aviation program to it. So I would do, in the summer, like go there and fly for the summer and just do little things like that, take some classes there and meet some people out there. So I've always just had a passion for aviation. And so when it came to college, going to college, it was actually I could play basketball on a full ride scholarship to a school, or I could go the aviation route. And I turned down a full ride scholarship to pursue a career in aviation at Embry-Riddle. So what I studied air traffic management actually, so nothing to do with insurance at all. I wanted to be an air traffic controller. That was kind of my route, and that's what my major was in. And so when I graduated college, I had taken the FAA exam to, proceed to the next step with becoming an air traffic controller. And unfortunately, the government had shut down for 6 months. And so as a recent graduate, from such an expensive school and a very, a very good school at that, but you're kind of like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? I don't want a gap on my resume. And so I just started applying for anything aviation. I probably applied to over 100, 200 jobs. And that's when I stumbled across Star in their for their aviation division and started off in insurance. Didn't know a single thing about insurance. I mean, obviously you kind of know the basics, but nothing to do with aviation. So it was a great starting point for me, at Star to be able to learn it as an assistant position and kind of grow into the role. I just have such a passion for aviation. I know the terminology, the lingo, it just comes a little bit more natural to me. Applying to 100, 200 jobs at one point it's daunting and it's exhausting, right? I get that. And I just never gave up. I mean, obviously I had great resources from Embry-Riddle, people pushing me, people giving me as many recommendations as they could. But, as we all know in the job market, it just takes some time sometimes. So in between, I actually did, I needed to work, I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. So I actually was a medical ambulance dispatcher. So it wasn't anything to do with aviation, but it was kind of similar because you're talking across a radio and, dispatching ambulance services and everything. So it was the closest thing I could get in a small town where my family's from. So, like you say, at the end of the day, you have to get to the positions that we are in now. You have to put forth the work in the early days. And I can definitely say I did that. And, I'm reaping the rewards now and doing something that I really thoroughly enjoy. So,
Can you touch on transferable skills and that possibly you've learned along the way that have really helped you be successful in your role now?
In my day-to-day now as a broker, I probably use my marketing degree more in the fact that I'm putting myself in my clients' positions when it comes to purchasing. As I grew, I think the marketing side really came back out and where I found myself enjoying the time spent directly with clients, going on visits, site visits, being at the conventions, getting, face-to-face time with these people that I was insuring. And so when the time came for a change, I think I really leaned back on some of these marketing classes and the skills that I learned back in school 10 years ago that are still very transferable and apply now more to my daily life than they did necessarily when I was an underwriter. That's not to say they didn't entirely, but now as a broker and a sales role, a lot of what I learned is definitely coming back into play. And my husband works in light aviation as an underwriter, and he has a psychology degree. One benefit, we both started as underwriting assistants, and so did Priya, as she mentioned earlier. It is so beneficial for those that want to maybe start, like you're saying, but not really sure how to like dip their toe in, to learn at a great company. They invest in your training and you can learn from the ground up. I will also say a huge part of it is a manager who will support you and make sure that you get the training that you need and, wants to see you succeed in your career. That training is really, talk about transferable. I lean on my skills that I learned in underwriting every single day when I'm communicating with underwriters now. I try and ask myself, what do they need? So I think starting, even if it's an unexpected place or an unexpected role, you can still learn so much. And all of that starts as your base to grow those transferable skills so that when you do start a new role, you might say, well, I haven't done this in like 7 years, but I know how to do it. And I did it before and I can do it again.
So Priya, what about transferable skills for you? To hear both your stories, it is interesting to see what transferable skills you were able to use or bring with you in your role now.
Coming from an aviation background as an air traffic controller, the organizational skills are probably like the number one thing, and communication at the end of the day, right? Like those two things you learn as an air traffic controller, you can also bring that on set to really any job. And then I think as well, at the end of the day, that helps me being in aviation is a little bit of the terminology. So in my role, sometimes we do talk to risk managers who know nothing about aviation and know everything about insurance, or you could be talking with chief pilots and, a little bit more focused towards the flight department and the safety initiatives. So there's a lot of aviation, terminology that gets thrown out into meetings like that. Going to an aviation school and being around that lingo, it's transferred me, to have more meaningful conversations with chief pilots and safety officers of companies, and be able to speak a little bit more intelligently and ask the meaningful questions, not just for myself to understand, what they do, but also for any of our carrier partners that visit alongside with us, so that they can understand the true risk and exposure of these companies as well. So, and I can really put that back towards, going to Embry-Riddle and kind of focusing on those skills being an air traffic controller.
But let's get into what your day to day looks like in both your roles.
We are attending industry events, probably between 3 to 5 a year. Major, HAI or BAI now. Oshkosh is next week. ABC, NBAA. So those are built into our year every year. I have spoken on the NAAA, so the National Aviation Agricultural Association panel twice on the insurance panel for the workers' comp representative. But day to day, we are in the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's 6 of us in the Atlanta office. We all try and be there together, and we do very much enjoy all being there on the same day and working with one another, even though I don't cross over with any of the 5 of them very often. It is still very nice for the camaraderie. Most of my day is spent on the phone or emailing clients, making sure that I'm getting applications on time and getting those applications out to underwriters. With workers' comp, audits are a huge deal and can be a pain and a problem. So most of the time when you're working on audits, you are figuring something out for a client or trying to act as the go-between between what your client feels is wrong with the audit versus what the auditor and the insurance company are saying. And so a lot of my day is problem solving. My previous manager would hammer into us, pick up the phone. Whatever you're trying to say over email, your tone, however you read it is not how someone else is going to read it. And if you want it said the way you want it said, pick up the phone. A lot of that is answering questions for me too. I get a lot of people, like Priya said, might know a lot about aviation, have never done anything with workers' comp in their entire life. And, look, that's a good thing. We don't like injuries or anything like that. But at the same time, they don't know what to do. So I, as their broker, am there to take that worry off of them and completely alleviate their concerns and tell them that A, I've got them covered. And B, if I don't know the answer, I'll figure it out and get back to them as soon as possible. A lot of my day in the office is spent doing that. And a lot of the aviation insurance industry is based in Atlanta. So we've always got people visiting, clients coming in. Our office is used as a meeting space pretty often. So we get to see some of our colleagues from New York or Dallas and Chicago, which is always great. And maybe events after work, happy hours, things like that. The other day, I got to go to PDK. We eat lunch there sometimes and, right on the runway, it's pretty nice. But we have clients there, so we'll take meetings at PDK, whatever's convenient for them. So really our day-to-day looks very different For example, I leave for Alaska on Sunday to go visit 4 operators. So I'll spend the next 4 days in Alaska, back to back visiting clients. And so that doesn't happen very often either, but it does happen on occasion.
So, Priya, what does your day to day look like?
As a broker, a lot of our roles are more client facing. So we have a lot of catch up calls with clients. Sometimes there are open items calls because there's always something that we're working on for them. But predominantly, we are always trying to problem solve for them. Most people think a corporate flight department just kind of runs, run of the mill, like, oh, how hard it is to go from Atlanta to, I don't know, LA, but there's a lot of logistics behind the scenes that has to happen. So sometimes they're flying, certain people. There's just a lot of checklists that they have to go through. So we are those people that they can call to say, hey, God forbid something happens. How does our policy respond? And you want to be able to explain that to them in the most simple terms, because if anyone has ever looked at an insurance policy, you almost feel like you need to be a lawyer at times, right? Some of the wordings in there are a little complicated, but that's what we are here for, is to kind of break that down and simplify it for them. The last fun trip I did was down to Florida, and we got to visit a few of our clients, and we get to go to hangars that they are pristine hangars right at the end of the day with some pretty cool assets to their name. It's cool to kind of be behind the scenes and see that. You don't get to see that on a daily basis. And granted, I'm still trying to get one of my clients to give me a ride on one of their nice corporate jets, but for now we just sit on them in the hangar and we get to see them and kind of see how they're maintained and meet the teams that way. Our days are never the same. You never know really what you're getting into. As Emily said, Atlanta is the hub for a lot of insurance professionals. We're always going for lunches, happy hours, coffees, people just reaching out, visiting our office, stopping by to quickly say hi. Feels like we're all friends at the end of the day. It's like we've known each other. Sometimes you've only known each other in the role that you're in, or sometimes like Emily and I've known each other for 10 years. And out of that, we've made some really great friends along the way as well. So
Can you talk about how important insurance is for the future of aviation and the work that you guys are doing now?
the industry as a whole is only growing, right? That's where insurance really comes into play. Is there's all these uncertainties and unknowns and growth in the industry. Well, as things grow, there's more chance for risk. So that's where the insurance factor really comes into play. It's an industry that's never going to go away. It's something that is always going to be growing, and I think that for specifically women, and especially in aviation, it's such a male dominated field, that now is our time. I think it's important for us to just kind of empower the younger generations as they're going into schools and learning about insurance or aviation insurance. That's what I like to do. I try to keep connected to Embry-Riddle as well. I try to just reach out to the younger generation and bring the women in the industry up and empower them to keep going. And one day they could be in our positions, they could exceed our positions. That's the goal and the hope at the end of the day.
So, if someone doesn't have a traditional aviation or traditional insurance, it sounds like both of you guys kind of had completely different entry points. Do you have any advice to women that may now just be learning that this is an option?
My advice would be, don't count out any roles just because they might sound or, not be what you envision for yourself. I certainly didn't ever expect to graduate college and then not like Atlanta and end up at the front desk. And it has landed me, it has given me my career, truly. Such a happy mistake that I will, be forever grateful that I ended up as a temp at the front desk at Star. But had you asked me when I was walking out of the graduation doors, was that the plan? No, it wasn't, but that's okay. And so I think being flexible, patience is also a big deal. I did not expect to be promoted ever. I think sometimes you go in and say, okay, well, if I hit every mark in 1 year, I should be moving up. Kind of let go of that and know it will come when it is supposed to, and just work hard and you will be rewarded. Some of the younger generation come in and they're like, okay, well, I'm doing my 2 years here, and if I don't get promoted, I'm out. I would encourage you not to look at it that way. And when most people get into aviation insurance, I feel like they don't leave. It's a very small industry. Everyone knows everyone. And that can be a very good thing or a very bad thing. And so, just consider when you are moving about the industry, I would just say don't burn any bridges and handle everything with grace. If you have this big grand idea for yourself, just remember that that's all it is an idea, and it might not play out that way in reality, and that starting out as an underwriting assistant or learning under somebody is so valuable. Be very eager to learn, work hard and show up, and everything will fall into place. I mean, I'm forever thankful for all of my mentors that have gotten me to this day and will continue to get me further in my career. And but I wouldn't have had those mentors, if I wasn't willing to put in the work and the hours and commit to learning and getting out of your comfort zone. And like I said, maybe accepting a role that you didn't really envision for yourself. It can take you great places.
I would agree with Emily. The flexibility, I think, is the big thing, right? I mean, my story is wanted to be an air traffic controller, and now I'm doing completely, something completely different. And it was just one of those things that you have to just be okay with knowing that it's not always going to be, maybe your projected path there, but it most of the time works out differently and better, for opportunities. And I mean, I think Emily and I can both project, like when we were at Star, there were times where we were working on the weekends at times, but at the end of the day, that's what's gotten us to where we are.
Why is now a great time for women to explore career opportunities within aviation and insurance?
As Priya mentioned earlier, we are in a male dominated, industry. It is always a good time for more women. There are a lot of great mentors that have helped me get where I am. I am happy to be a mentor to anybody that wants to, get into the industry. We all need to look out for each other. Speaking in terms of job security, insurance is obviously a great, very steady industry that, everybody's going to always need insurance. Aviation, especially, there's never going to be a shortage. So it's a good, stable career, but we need more women. So it's always a good time to join.
I think now more than anything, we're seeing a lot more women go in leadership roles. And so I think that's just kind of a great, kind of thought to say, okay, there's more women going into aviation and getting into leadership roles at the end of the day, like Emily and myself, and I can name 100 other people, just within the Marsh practice that are in high leadership roles. For Marsh specifically, our like Southeast zonal leader is a female. Our head of Marsh US is also a female. So having leadership from top down, in that kind of female role, it inspires people like Emily and myself and others to kind of keep going, because you just kind of have that female empowerment, around you to kind of keep going. Any younger, person looking and reviewing our video and seeing what we're saying, I think using the resources like this organization, Women in Corporate, there's so many other women organizations out there, and I think it's really important to kind of be a part of those. At the end of the day, we all want to support each other, and how do we do it? It's by kind of attending events like this and being connected, just like Brittany, how you and I, became connected out of this and kind of look where we are now.